Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field educate, inform and inspire the community to live a healthier and balanced life and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is holistic counsellor Barbara Jackson, and we'll be talking about an holistic approach to anxiety. Welcome to the program, Barbara.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Barbara, in terms of anxiety, what is it?
So, Melissa, anxiety is something that many of us experience at different periods in our life. It's the fear of what may happen. So it may be based on experiences we've had and the fear of them being repeated, or it may be the fear of new experiences. Having to see somebody we don't know, go to an environment that makes us feel unsafe, unsecure. So the anxiety is the fear of feeling threatened or feeling that we won't be able to keep safe in the space or with those people. People experience anxiety in many different ways. So there's heavy breathing, increased heart rate, adrenaline rushes, what we call our stress hormone, cortisol, also flows really, really strongly. And so we're in what we call the fight, flight or freeze mode. And sometimes people don't understand that this is actually anxiety. They may feel, oh, I felt a bit rattled in that. And when they realize that this is something that repeats quite frequently, different circumstances or the same circumstances, then they can look into and maybe understand that it is actually anxiety they're experiencing. What happens as well, they may sweat. They may have the shakes, they may feel nauseous, they may feel that they feel really weak or tired. They can also feel confused or overwhelmed. And then on a more spiritual level, they may feel completely disconnected from all the energies, all the resources that they would normally have. So many people also experience anxiety to the extent where it leads to a panic attack, which is a really exacerbated level of all of those symptoms.
With anxiety, how would you use a holistic approach to deal with it?
So a holistic approach is looking at our mental, emotional, physical and spiritual well-being. So first of all, we would check with the client if they had actually been for a medical check to see that there isn't anything physically happening, chemical imbalances or anything like that. Then we would look at their history and gently and nurturingly explore when the anxiety started, how it started. They may know, they may not recognize it. They may go, well, it just happens. I don't know. So helping them to explore the causes, the triggers of the anxiety. With the holistic approach, this may also be bringing in energy healing, something like Reiki, also looking at maybe using some essential oils, some sound healing, and we can explore that at a later date as well. It's a big topic. However, it's also helping them to get to the root cause. So when we go to the root cause, that's where the healing can begin. Clients then also learn things like breathing techniques, because when we're in that panicky, anxious state, we're not really breathing properly. When we learn to take those slower, deeper breaths, we're slowing down our heart rate. We're slowing down the adrenaline. We're slowing down the cortisol. You know, sometimes when you just take that big breath and have a sigh, and it's like, oh, that feels better. So this is very similar, except we do repetitive, slow, deep breathing. This takes a person into what we call the parasympathetic state. So it's resetting our system and bringing us back into the present, where we're then able to take that moment to go, am I safe? What is the actual fear? And how else can I navigate it in a calmer state, in a more relaxed state?
Talking about the past and, is a holistic approach based in the past?
Oh, Melissa, if we look back at Hippocrates, some people may not have heard of him. So he's a Greek person who he actually started looking at us as a whole, as a mind, body and soul. And through his studies, he actually introduced a holistic approach to well-being. And it's also important for us to understand that beyond anxiety, a holistic approach can also support us if we're experiencing depression or trauma. It can support us if we're experiencing something like low self-esteem, or when we feel that we're stuck in our lives, we don't know how to move forward. So there are various approaches and techniques within the holistic counselling that can help us to untap why we're stuck, why we're holding on to the trauma. And when we heal, the important thing to remember is our story is still our story. So we may still have had the anxiety, however, it's not all consuming now. If you take a book, a big, bright, colourful book, and you open it up, or you're watching a movie and you feel like you're stepping into the colour and you're stepping into all the emotions of it, when we heal, we're still able to tell our story. That book becomes that dusty old tatty book that we can put on the bottom of the bookshelf somewhere, because we're not stepping into the raw emotions of the anxiety or the trauma or the depression. So we're able to then move forward in life with hope, with joy, with focus, and also with strategies. When we look at our breathing, when I did talk about slowing down our breathing, there is a vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve that goes from our head all the way down to our digestive system. When we reset that, we do it through a breath that's an inhale of 5 to the count of 5, and then we exhale slowly to the count of 10. And again, this slows our whole body down, helps the shoulders drop, help us to see things a lot clearer, to focus a lot better, because we're also bringing oxygen into our brain as well. So this helps us in many, many ways, and also helps our digestive system as well.
What advice would you give to people who would like to go and use this approach in their journey?
Oh, certainly, Melissa. It's first of all making sure that you seek professional advice, making sure that whoever you are going to see, that you feel you connect with them. Somebody's already anxious and they then going to a stranger, that's not necessarily going to help the anxiety. So with having that little conversation, it helps them to feel a little bit more comfortable and supported when coming to see me, or going to see any other professional as well.
Well, thank you very much for that. I learnt quite a lot.
Thank you very much.
If you would like to know more about a holistic approach to anxiety and Barbara, you can go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another guest with an interesting topic. Stay tuned after the break. Men's coach and registered nurse Kosta Michalopoulos will be talking about how men experience grief and loss. Welcome back. Our second guest is men's coach and registered nurse Kosta Michalopoulos, and he's here to talk to us about how men experience grief and loss. Welcome to the program, Kosta.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
In what way do men experience grief?
Unfortunately or fortunately, grief and loss is part of our journey, and as men, traditionally we don't know how to deal with this. So what is grief? Grief is, there is this beautiful quote that says, grief is the unresolved love, the love that has nowhere to go. And it's the direct result of loss. And loss, it's not necessarily the loss of a loved one, which obviously, that's quite obvious, but it might be the loss of a pet, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, career, migration, moving to a different country. That, all these life events, which they are part of our normal life, can create grief. And the first thing that we tend to do is try and suppress it, try and move on. And that comes back to how we have been raised, what is the narrative that's been handed down to us, how to deal with these emotions, or how not to deal with the emotions. Unfortunately, we tend to suppress, we tend to minimize the impact that it has on us, on our emotional, physical, intellectual well-being. It has such a profound impact, but still yet these days, the modern man still doesn't know how to process this.
What consequences are there for men if they don't process their grief?
Unfortunately, the consequences are quite significant. Starting from our mental health, the unprocessed grief can look into the isolation of trying to suppress our emotions, trying to be stoic and move on with life. And there is this quote that men always use, time heals everything. Unfortunately, time doesn't heal anything. If we leave it, it will surface sooner or later. And that can look sort of through depression, anxiety, unprocessed grief, trauma. So some physical symptoms and physical impact on our body can be chronic pain, chronic diseases, and there is enough research that shows that the impact that the unprocessed grief has. Also, relationships, how we process grief has a direct impact on our relationships, our relationship with our loved ones. I think personally, looking back into my own experience when I was riddled with loss in my life and I didn't know how to process grief, I pushed my loved ones away. And they didn't know how to deal with this. And that creates complex layers in the relationships, layers of resentment, layers of isolation, of the inability to emotionally express what's happening. And the relationship, that can have a significant toll on the relationship. Sometimes the relationship breaks, or sometimes the person who is experiencing grief might look into different avenues of managing this, where there is addiction. And addiction can be gambling, it can be alcohol, substances. It's a way of numbing the pain. And men don't know how to actually approach the loved ones, other men, and seek help. And that's one of the most important steps in the process of managing grief. Having the awareness, understanding of what's happening, allowing space and the time to process all these emotions that come with it, and seek help, whether it's help from the loved ones or seek help from professionals. So I would also like to mention that the impact that the unprocessed grief has on men's mental health, and looking at the statistics in Australia, 3 out of 4 suicides are men, unfortunately. And this has become almost an epidemic. And us men, and it's not just a problem for us men, it's a societal problem. So we need to find ways how to actually manage the emotions, how to actually seek help and reach out.
Do you have any advice for a man experiencing grief and loss?
First thing is acknowledging our grief. And that's not easy. That's not easy because we have been told how to keep moving on, how to be stoic, how to be resilient, how to be strong. By allowing and understanding that the grief lives inside of us is the most important step, and sometimes even the hardest. How do you actually acknowledge that grief? How do you get in touch with that grief inside of you? Speaking about it. Speaking about the loss, speaking about your emotions, speaking about how it's impacting your life. And then sit with it. And that's something that we hear all the time. Sit with your emotions. What does it actually mean? Allow the space to see, what's coming up without any substances, without any interruptions, without the noise. What is grief saying? Is it we missing our loved one? Is it readjusting to a new life? What is it? Is it pain? Is it the sadness? Understanding all this. And then, what do we do with this? Grief, it's like a journey. Some days are better than others. Understanding that and allowing again the kindness within ourselves to process this, to understand this, without trying to suppress it. And that's a journey. But this is not just that. It's not just that internal dialogue on a daily basis. It's actually seeking help. seeking help, whether it's going to be through our family and our loved ones, and have the conversations, but also seeking help for us men, whether it's going to be a men's group, finding other men that might be experiencing something similar and share. And then if things obviously are not progressing as expected, or life is, because we know life is not easy, seek professional help. Seek the help of a counsellor, of a psychologist, and speak with your local doctor, especially when things get really overwhelmed.
Thank you, Kosta. That's been a really meaningful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you'd like to know more about how men experience grief and loss and Kosta, go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, health coach Denise Mokadsi will discuss the topic, is anxiety and depression or brain fog in your DNA? Welcome back. Our last guest is health coach Denise Mokadsi, and the topic we'll be discussing is anxiety, depression and brain fog in your DNA, and what your genes reveal about you and your mental health and what you can do about it. Welcome, Denise.
Hi, how you going?
Many people struggle with mental health issues and depression and anxiety and brain fog. How do our genetics play a part in that?
Many people do struggle with mental health issues, and we've got a very stressful lifestyle, most of us. And epigenetics is really a way that we can look at how can we use our genes as information to how we might be able to better handle mental health. Epigenetics might be a term that viewers have heard of before, but may not really understand. An easy way to look at it, I find, is to use an analogy, and this particular one could be like music. So if we think of our DNA or our genes like the notes on a sheet of music, and when we can't change that, so the notes are already there, but how we play those notes is kind of like our lifestyle, and together how we play the notes is our result, like our outcomes that we see. That together is kind of the epigenetics. So basically it's our lifestyle influencing our genes. And when we understand how we might be able to do certain things in our lifestyle to get better influences on our genes, then we can have a bit more control over how we handle stress and that kind of, how we're coming across from a mental perspective, how well we can handle things because of what we're doing in our lifestyle.
Can you share some examples of knowing your genetic profile and how it can help someone manage their mental health issues?
Because we're all individuals, we've all got different genetic profiles basically. But when we know our own profile, it can help us manage our experiences with more knowledge, I guess, more power on how we react to something. The differences do come a lot quite through hormones. So for example, someone might be more sensitive to adrenaline, for example, and say something happens where you have a negative response to that episode or that experience, you might be more likely to respond from the lens of adrenaline. So you might be more like wanting to attack. Like adrenaline's like that fight, we've got the fight, flight, freeze. So adrenaline's going to push someone more to react that way. And whereas someone else might react more from hide away or introversion rather than sort of fight into something. So the way that we respond to our experiences really will influence how we live our life, basically. So when we know that, we know we've got a particular genetic profile that is this way inclined, we can mitigate some of the ways that we respond, knowing that we're more likely to respond with an attack, for example, or more likely to run away from a thing. And so that's one way that we can use our genetic profile to influence how we might think about something and react to something, and hence our mental health or how we interpret all of that. There are other ways that we can look even deeper as well in our genetic sequence.
Depending on what genes someone has, they may or may not metabolize certain hormones and neurotransmitters a particular way. And that can also affect our brain health, as can our diet. If we're not eating the right foods that allow these genes or enzymes to function properly, then you can also affect your mental health. It can be very complicated, so I'm just trying to keep it fairly simple, but personalities and all of that is like our biology. We are born with these predispositions to act and respond a certain way, and when we know that about ourselves, then we just can be a bit more empowered about the situation and our experience.
Denise, what are some tips for our viewers for them improving their mental health and resilience?
When it comes to mental health, if we think about our brain, it's largely fat. So eating lots of healthy fats like the omega-3s, the leafy greens, the fish, avocados, walnuts, all of those types of things to really help have a healthy brain is going to help from a physical perspective with our mental health. Exercise is another really great tip for people. If we could bottle exercise as a pill, antidepressant, the results that you get from exercise outweigh any benefit that a pill for, depression might do. So exercise is always a really good one, just to be moving. And relationships, social relationships with people can help someone's mental health. If you're very isolated, it can be hard to manage what's going on, but when you've got good social support, then you can talk about what you're feeling and get support that way. But I think too, especially with mental health issues, if anyone has any concerns, then it's always best to seek professional advice to help someone navigate their mental health.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Such important information. If you'd like to know more about Denise and how genetics and DNA can influence your mental health, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And that's all for us for today. We'll say bye-bye until next time. If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel.